Okay, back with the Syren here. Chapter 9 is done. We're going to starting on chapter 10, which is the headrails and figurehead. Headrails being basically everything you see here. All the different timbers and whatnot. So in this chapter we need to do all that. We have some rings to put in place on the bow. We have the catheads to do. And eventually the bumpkins and the figurehead itself. First part we need to do is put on the cheeks, which is these two pieces here, and then there's some pieces that go in between them to space them out, and then you can drill the hawse holes. To do that, we have several pieces here. The cheeks are made up on each side of the decorative pieces that go out onto the stem. Get them all out here. And the pieces that actually go onto the bow of the ship on the sides. So you have those, and you have these that go just inside of them. And when it's done, these pieces will actually be standing up like that for the ships right here. First thing to do, I believe, is to get these four pieces here on where they need to be. And from looking at the instructions, one piece goes on this first plank above the whales, and the second one goes on the center whale. And depending on where you look, they could be centered on these, or they could be towards the top of the edge of the wood. The drawing shows them thinner and higher. The pictures in the instructions show them more centered on each and thicker. So I'm thinking for me, the best way to figure it out is stick one on temporarily and see where it falls out here. This piece should be lined up so when this piece squares onto it, the slot here is still visible. And if you can see, there's a slot right here for the gammoning to go through. So what I'll do is I'll get this piece glued on. There's another piece that gets glued on right here. These just be glued on with super glue. And then there's a piece of wood that goes between them to build up the hole for where the hawse holes go. I cut this piece out to what looks to be the right width based on the plans and stuff. So all I'll do is I'll glue this top cheek in place as straight as I can. Glue the pieces in between in place, and I'll glue the bottom one so it fits up against it. That way I know they're parallel, since I know this thing is the same width all the way across. Excuse me. So I get the top done, get those in, and this bottom piece in. The piece that goes in between is done in 2 layers to build up for the thickness of the whales. Remember, the top whale is at a lower height than the other two, so the first thickness of this will actually just be narrower and just build up the whale until it matches, or build the whale's surface until it matches. Each end will be curved as well. So I'll get that done and come back. Okay, so there we go. The cheeks are in place. Hopefully I got them right. I would test fit my mermaid on there, but I honestly lost the mermaid. I'm sure she'll turn up somewhere, but in the meantime, Model Expo is being kind enough to send me a replacement. This one here, this piece of the cheek comes all the way up to the top. It looks to be in the picture just a hair shy. This one here hangs over the front edge, and there'd be a piece of dowel put in the front that's between both sides. It's kind of carved, and then you have the pieces that go in between them. These will remain the natural color. These parts will be painted black, which I'll do next, and I'll get the other side done as well. Once I get that done, come back, and the next piece to put on, I believe, is one of the head rails here. which goes on somewhere in this area. I'll have to figure out how it goes on. I've just some notching to the cap rail to make it fit, and then it's hard to see on the camera, but there's a little bit of a hint of carving on these things here where it has the lines on it like the instructions show. I'll have to do the same thing to these. These pieces are laser cut, but you do have to come back in and trim the shape of the top here to get it so it's uniform all the way around. Once that piece is in, next that goes in is the lower head rails. Actually, it's the cat's heads, and then these lower head rails go in. And the lower head rails, when they go in, are made up of 3 pieces. A piece there, a piece that goes on like that, and then a piece that goes underneath like that supports the cat's head. So first I need to get that piece in, then I need to get the cat's heads in, I need to get these 3 pieces in. These will need their carving on them to give the impression that they're decorative edges on them. And the cat's head will have to be built up per the instructions and glued in place. But also have to notch out where the cat's head is going to go here. But first, like I said, is to get the head rail in place. I'll have to see if it's supposed to be notched in or if it just goes out on the edge. It seems like it should be notched in so that it fits flush against the shear plate. I'll have to double check that. So I'll get this painted up and come back with the other parts. Back on the Syren, I have this worked on the bow on both sides. One of the things that needs to be taken care of is there should be a little piece between these in the front. Instructions show it as a carved piece of dowel. It's not very long. So I have set up here my Dremel with a dowel in it. If you're going to do this, you need to get the actual drill chuck for the Dremel, as regular call it, is only one size. So I have a piece cut so I can stick it in there. Need to get it marked off to length, which is basically roughly about right there. It's not very wide. And then I can just take probably this one, nice triangular file. Sorry about the noise here. And you can just come in here, shape it down, get it smaller in size, and just get a shape to it. Shape can be up to you. I'm going to do mine kind of a barrel shaped, because I think that's going to be the best that it can be. I think that's going to be the best shape it can be to make it look like it's not just a round piece stuck in there. I also want to make it a little bit smaller than it is so that it fits in there better. But once you get it shaped down, again, I apologize for the noise of this, you can just cut it off and glue it in place. So I'm going to continue doing that and come back. Okay, I have it shaped about how I want it. I just got to cut it off. I'm just going to use a little micro saw here to cut it off. And incidentally, this is the same thing you're going to do to shape the stanchions around the pin rail that goes around the main mast. You're going to do the same kind of thing, chuck it up, and give it a shape. Should be easy to do, but for then, you're going to be, instead of making one piece, you're going to be making, I think it's like 9. Just notice that bolt's loose. Oh yeah, beautiful fit. I'll add decorative touch there and make it stronger on the tip. Once I have this glued in place, then it's back to doing the head rails. I've already marked off here how far they come back. It's like 3/8 of an inch from this line coming forward. Ran a line across, or ran a ruler across here, and it looks like it's fairly straight. So I can get that done. So you head rail, then you put the cat heads in, and then the second rail that goes on here. So I'll get this piece in and figure out get the head rail out, and we'll carve that up and get that, figure out how to install that. Okay, so here I have the cheeks in place. I have the pieces in between the cheeks in place. Still need to drill the hose holes, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. Right now, I want to work on starting on the rest of the head rails. This one here will go, the top one will go right here. And it's hard to tell from the instructions. They say it's glued onto the edge of the cap rail. I think it's going to have to be sunk into the cap rail. Otherwise, you're not going to get a very good joint there. And I think it would look a little weird if I just had it hanging out and floating in there like that. So I have it marked off. It's supposed to be 3/8 of an inch back from this line here. So I have a mark here. It's about 3/8 of an inch. So I just come in with my knife and trim that in. I think I'm just going to trim it down to trim the cap rail back down to the shear plank. So I just come in here, figure where my line is, cut it down, and just come in here and just nip away a little bit of the cap rail there. This cap rail is pretty deep, so it's a lot to be cut out of it. Just make sure you go back and see how it looks. And right there, I think I have it put out just about right. Now this front of it, this end here, is supposed to attach up here, but it's kind of ambiguous to how far down it attaches. You just read ahead the instructions, which I strongly recommend you do. You'll find that there's another piece that goes here and goes above it, where it attaches to the stem, and that it should follow this cap rail. I'm going to take a piece of this 16th by 16th, which is what it's going to be made out of anyway. So I can hold this in place, stick this up here, and see how it looks. And right there, it looks pretty good for the bow. So I'll probably put it about right there. But I need to figure out where it's going to be height-wise here. And basically what you're looking for is that you want this post to be completely vertical compared to basically the keel. And beware, as you slide it down, this end's going to go up. So you may have to do some more trimming on that. At some point in time, you also have to make sure there's room. There's going to be some 3/8 bolts here, another one down here that you have to be able to get to with your rigging. So I think this one's about right. I need to trim off a little bit at the end of it, and I think it'll fit in there just fine. This piece right here, just aft of this post, is also going to be cut away at an angle going in, and that's where your cat's head is going to go. But for now, let's get this piece in on both sides, get it adjusted. And then the next step after that is actually doing the cat's head. And the cat's head has a lot of parts to it. It's going to have a horizontal beam, vertical beam, eye bolts, some sheaves cut into it, pieces put on the edge of it. But we'll get to that in a minute. Right now, I'm just going to get this glued on both sides, and then come back and start working on this section of the cat's head. Get it in frame for you here so you can see what I'm talking about. That'll be step 2 here for chapter 10 that we're on. So like I said, step 3 is the middle rail on the cat's head. You gotta get the cat's head in place, and then you get this middle rail in place, which is actually 3 pieces. Once that's done, then you get the timbers going in, the top plate, and everything else. So get these in place, and then come back. The upper rails are in place on both sides. Make sure when you put them on that you get them pretty much the same height up above the cap rail, same distance back from the bow, and look at it from all angles and see if you got them as symmetrical as you can possibly get it. Mine are looking pretty good. I mean, close scrutiny measurement, you'll find they'll be out a little bit, but that's fine. Next thing to do will be the cat's heads that come out basically right behind them. And there's a piece that comes out and a piece that comes up, and then you'll sand those smooth, blend them in, and paint them black. So I'm going to go ahead and get those started to cut out. I'm not sure how I'm doing them yet, so I'm going to do the verticals before the horizontals or the horizontals before the verticals. Either. Okay, I have the two pieces for the cat's head here. These will be pieces that go out. When you're looking at the drawing, this is not the length of the horizontal section. This is an overview of the whole piece, the horizontal and the vertical. So what you're going to end up at the end of the day is two pieces that go together like this, blended together to make them look like they're one piece. So I have two pieces for this top piece. I've already beveled the edges, just a piece of sandpaper, just bevel the edge, make it look nice. It has a sheave going through the center on both of them, two sheaves. Do that the same as I did on the sheaves on the side of the ship, where I drill a hole for either end of it, cut out a piece in the center with the X-Acto knife, do it black with pencil lead, then I'll just sand the faces down so you don't see anything other than that sheave in there. From the plans, they're basically here on the end, and there's two of them. And then there's a hole further back that just goes through. Not sure if that hole's for offhand, but we'll figure it out as I go along. And then the instructions say these cleats are made with 1/64 inch thick wood. You do not have that wood in your kit. And to me, these look like, based on the ratio compared to the wood to the member, the beam, that they're thicker than the 1/64. So I'll make them out of 1/32 inch wood, 1/16 of an inch wide. I think that'll look fine. Get these things made up. Holes in them, rings in them. And then we can come back, we can figure out how to lay it into the rail. What I'm looking at down here in the picture is there's an actual shadow right here on the waterway, which tells me that this vertical post is not flush with the bulwark. Don't know if that's the way it would be in real life. I was toying with the idea of doing a 45 on the bottom of the post so it fits up flush to the bulwark, but then the bulwark should be curved coming up and from bow to stern. So we'll probably leave it the way like this is. And I think what I may end up doing is glue this piece in, flush it off, then glue this piece on, sand it all down, mask around it, and paint it all black. Or actually, what I'll probably do is I'll paint it, build these two pieces, paint them black, and then make them fit, and then do the touch-ups. I think that'll be the best. So I'm going to get these things made up, and then we can start working on getting it laid in and cut in. Word of advice, make sure you have fresh blade for cutting the stuff in. A sharp blade is going to be a lot easier to use than a dull one, a lot safer, and you can get up with better cuts and tolerances and stuff. So for these, and this is just a copy of the plans I made as life size off the main plans. These come in, drill 2 holes, cut the sheaves, drill another hole. But I think this bit may be a little bit too big. But I'll get those things done, and we'll see where we're at. So here I have one of the cat's heads made up. I have the 3 pieces I'll make the sheave on the outside. So I've made these sheaves here, hole here, and I have 3 holes here in preparation for the rings that go on it. And just to glue these on, I'll just use a little bit of super glue and very carefully stick them in place where I need to be. One of the things you can do to grab these little tiny pieces is use an X-Acto knife to pick them up. Since they're just wood, and this will all be painted, So I'm trying to get it so I can line it up on the drawing here. Pick up what I have for the sheave itself and try to get it lined up on here. And then take the piece that goes behind the sheave and glue it in place right behind it. Whoops. Or glue it to my finger, as the case may be. You could probably also just make this as one piece and just cut out a slot in it as well once you get it glued in place. Then take the last piece and glue it on top. Let that dry. That gives you a fairly nice sheave. I'm going to sand it and round it because this outer piece is probably metal. But don't do too much sanding, otherwise you lose it all together. So that's one side. Next thing to do on this side is to add the eye bolts onto it. It has 3 eye bolts. Doesn't matter if you start with brass or blackened ones because they're going to be painted black anyway. I'm going to use my blackened ones. That's what happens when you don't have everything out already. Gotta go find it. Cut them off because you don't need that full length. Find where your holes are. And I just grab them with a pair of tweezers. Get a big blob of glue on the end and stick them in place. That's the wrong one. Make sure you don't put them in the wrong hole. The hole I stuck them in is the one that goes through the top, so I don't know what that's for, but I think a line goes through it eventually. Number 2 and number 3. At this point in time, by not having them cut to length and shape and everything, it doesn't matter which side is top. Now we can decide which one goes on which side. Let's get the second one. Get some super glue on it. And glue it in place. Maybe I left that one a bit long. It'll be fine. Do the same thing for this last one. A little glue on it. Glue it in place. And there is one of the cat's heads complete. I'll go ahead and get this thing painted black, except for this very end here where I don't care. Sand this area, paint it black. Run the drill through the holes again just to make sure they're still clear. Make up the second one. And then I can start cutting into the cap rail to make them fit. Once they go on, they'll just be something like that. The rings go up to, I believe, the bowsprit. And there's another piece that comes in here. And hopefully I got them right. As always, take a look and see if they look even close. Which that is pretty darn close. I'll get the other one made up and then we'll come back and we can start figuring out attaching them to the ship. Okay, the next step on our journey to make the cat head is, now that we have the top piece, we need to make a piece that goes on here. The instructions have you put this piece into the hole first and then glue this piece on top, paint it all black, sand it smooth, all that. What I found is instead of putting it together so it's like that, where the cathead overlaps the piece in the hole, I did it this way. What that gained me is I can cut this piece, make it fit exactly to the hole, top, bottom, everything. Oh wait, take that back. I can take this piece, make it fit to the hole with the proper angle on this end and everything. And then this piece has to make it so it fits up and butts up against this piece, and then I can just trim the top off, sand it, and make it look good. It also allows me to put a pin between the cathead horizontal piece and the vertical piece to give it some strength. And when I'm done with that, I end up with a one-piece cathead that, once it's painted black, will look like it's one piece. Rounded on the top, smooth edges, got the cleat glued on. And with the trimming of the ship itself to make it fit up around this piece here, with everything said and done, this lays in there like it was, well, made for it. And the only trimming I did is flatten the top a bit, cut the cap rail away a little bit here, and then cut the cap rail away on the outside so that the next piece of wood down fits flush against the hull. So now you can do that on this side. I'll get that done and come back. But in the meantime, what I've used for a pin is I have a brass eye loop from a previous kit that's left over. Now what I do is once I get this thing cut to length, glue this in, leave it sharp on the other end, and then I can just use it to mark where I drill a hole in this piece. Then I can glue them together and shape them. I'll get to that point where this is the end. This is cut to length and shaped and everything. Pin the end. This is shaped. Come back and I'll show you how to make that mark. Okay, so I have the upright in place. It's not glued, it's just sitting there. Cut away for the inside cap rail and the outside cap rail to make it fit. This piece here is just about ready to connect up here. You got to make sure it's got the proper angle and that's not sticking out too far. Because I have this one here marked already, I'm going to mark how far out it should stick. This is all going to get painted, so this isn't going to make any difference here if I mark it up with a pencil or not. And this line here is basically where the edge of the cap rail will be. Make sure you put it the right way. You don't want one with these rings going forward, one with the rings going back. The ring should be forward on both. And then come and just join the line across the top. And then just eyeball it and see how far back it needs to go. It looks like it needs to go about right there. But since it needs to be an angle, whoops, let's throw it on the ground. I can come in and just start trimming and sanding to get to the shape I want. Making sure I cut the right direction. Just about where I want it. You look at it, rings to the front, pretty good angle. And so then what I can do is I can make a drill hole right here in the center. Doesn't have to be overly deep. Take my eye bolt wherever I put it. A little glue on it. Stick it in. Let that dry. But I don't need the eye bolt itself, so I'll cut that off at an angle just so I get a point. And I'll save that in case I need to use it later for something else. So now I have the upright, the bottom shape to fit the deck, the top shape to fit the upright and the cap rail. Forgot I need to do a sand spot right here. The cap rail goes, where the cat's head goes, so that it can fit in there. So let's give me some fresh wood to glue to. Stick this sucker in here, right where it goes. Then you take this thing. I can make a nice hole, make a mark on here about where it goes. Then you drill a hole so it gets centered up right where I want it. Doesn't matter if you go all the way through, you're going to sand and paint and all that anyway. So once that's done, make sure it goes together. See how it fits here. It's in the right spot, which it is. And then you can just glue it together. In this case, I'm just using super glue to put together. Good healthy amount, because you're going to be sanding this thing anyway. Make sure you get the right way around. Nice and squared up. And then you can just come back in. Get over here. And start trimming this end off. Leave it alone as you're just going to sand it to make it fit, make everything smooth. And then to sand it, I use piece of sandpaper on a square piece of wood, so I just come up and sand it smooth. To make this curve on the end, I'm just going to sand it. And the trick to sanding a curve is don't sand it like this and try to get a curve. Start like this and sand it like that. So you come up and you'll end up with a really nice curve. So you're sanding the top first and you're moving down to the side. And that will give you a pretty nice curve. And with that, I have two pretty much matching cat's heads. And the last thing is to put on the cleat wherever I put it. Don't forget to put the cleat on, then you can paint it black, and from there you're ready to go to glue it in place. I'm just again using super glue to put the cleat on. I was toying with the idea if I just want to take a small drill and drill through it and put a pin in it, but I think these will hold on just fine the way they are. So now I can check the fit again, paint them both black, and glue them in place. And that will be the cat heads in place. Means the next thing is to do this second rail that goes underneath, and that's in 3 pieces, I think that one is going to be a little tricky, so I'll get the first one done and come back and show you how I did it. Okay, next up on the bow is to do the next rail. It's comprised of 3 parts. They have shape to them. This one here has a little bit of a curve. This is going the opposite direction as the drawing because this is for the other side. And this one here has a barely discernible curve on it on the sides to make it fit the hull. They get glued on 3 pieces, come around to the front, and then they get braces in between them, the 2 rails, to complete it up. When complete, they're going to look like this. And then there'll be a top piece made up with rods put in to have it complete, finish off as well. I'm going to get those done and come on back. Okay, all the parts are on the front, mermaids in place. They don't line up exactly left to right for the lower timbers. I'm not going to worry about that because it's hard to see, plus there's going to be stuff rigging in front of it. Top down looks good. I'm going to call that good. Word of advice: read your instructions closely. Or look at your plans closely. When you're putting the eye bolts on, you have 4 eye bolts in here that need to go in on the hole, one down here with a ring. But there's also one on the very front of this timber. It's right here. I don't know if you can see that. It's not showing the instructions. Instructions never tell you about it, but it's showing 2 points on the plans. First on sheet 1, on the bow section, it shows one of the rings on the timber heads. But also on sheet 8 on the upper left, where it's showing the rigging plan, it shows these rings with a martingale stay going to it from the dolphin, or excuse me, outer martingale back rope from the dolphin strikers going to that. So don't forget to get those in. They're going to be easier to put in before putting the bow pieces in place than after. Just like the instructions also show 1 eye bolt down here in the margin plank. That's your forestay for the main mast. Never told you to put that in, but you're going to want to put that in before putting in like the bow sprit and the pin rails. I'll get that in when I do the interior. Right now, I'm going to get this thing coated up, and then I'll join you next time. Thank you for watching, and that will complete this section of the bow. Next time, we'll be working on the inner bulwarks and the carronades.